Hello and welcome to our special broadcast, Bad Medicine. Now, the Haryana government has decided to halt production at the Maiden Pharma Sonipat facility. It has also issued a 5-page show cause notice listing 12 violations to the company. Now, Maiden Pharma has a week to respond to this show cause notice. The company is in the dock after deaths of 69 children in Gambia were linked to their cough syrups. The World Health Organization has told CNBC-TV18 that unlike what the pharma company claimed earlier, the agency had not inspected or assessed any of its products. Ekta Batra is joining us now. Ekta, take us through some of these key violations that have now been red flagged.
Well, thanks for that. To start with, the regulators found that the entire plant was under renovation. Regulatory experts point out that many a times when plants are under renovation, evidence gets hidden and it doesn't allow one to assess the compliance standards of the plant in a steady state. Regulators point out many a times dubious manufacturers do that to hide lapses. Also, Maiden Pharmaceuticals failed to produce the logbooks of equipments and instruments regarding manufacturing and testing for the cough syrups. Logbooks are critical to understand the functioning of equipment, and regulators point out it is a basic good manufacturing compliance requirement. Other violations included the following. The company claimed to have submitted 6 months of real-time and accelerated stability data of the cough syrups. What this means is that a manufacturer has to undertake tests to check if the drug is stable, that is, it is looked and behaved the same way after a period of time, generally for the duration of expiry. The inspection, however, found no samples of the product in the stability chamber. This, experts say, point to possible data integrity, which means there is a chance the data could have also been falsified. Another violation was that Maiden Pharma did not perform process validation and analytical method validation for the 4 cough syrups. In layman terms, what this means, according to regulators, is that there is no guarantee that the future batches would be the same and hence reliable going forward as well. Another instance states that propylene glycol had failed as per the certificate of analysis for the test in respect of water, but was declared of standard quality. First, what is a certificate of analysis? It is a document which indicates all the test results of the drug, including the batch numbers of the API used to manufacture it. The drug, before it is released, is tested under many conditions to test the claimed specifications of the drug. In this case, regulatory experts say that the drug probably failed when it was tested to see its stability in water. Other points brought up by the state drug controller in their inspection of the company's Sonipat facility included lack of batch numbers, missing manufacturing and expiry dates in the certificate of analysis report. As mentioned above, it is expected to be the go-to document about the drug in question.
Right, Ekta, thanks a lot for taking us through that. Now, to take this discussion ahead, I'm now joined by Prashant Reddy, lawyer and co-author of the book, The Truth Pill. Mr. Reddy, thank you so much for joining us on the show. First question, those violations that Ekta was pointing out, quite egregious, quite serious in nature, that it managed to fly under the radar of the oversight mechanism that we have, the regulatory mechanism that we have, says something about it. You've written previously in the book about how we have the CDSO at the center, we have state regulatory bodies, and that adds to some confusion, creates overlaps. Is it time now to perhaps seriously think about an overhaul?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're right. You know, one of the simple reforms that could have improved the state of affairs at this particular plant is if the drug inspector was mandatorily required under law to keep publishing inspection reports of the facility. So under the law, every plant has to be inspected once for its compliance with GMP norms. And if the inspectors were actually doing their job and publishing reports, making it transparently available, it's very likely this tragedy wouldn't have occurred. As of today, we don't know what exactly is the track record of this plant because the past inspection reports are not made publicly available. Similarly, we don't know what happened in previous investigations because, as you know, this particular company was flagged for quality violations by several other regulators. In an ideal world, we would have had those investigation reports all be made publicly available. So right now, even when journalists like you are trying to dig into this matter, I'm sure you're finding it very, very difficult to find any record of the history of this particular facility when it came to quality violations. So you're right. I mean, one of the first measures that I would suggest in forms of, in the nature of reform is far greater transparency. And then after that, there would be several other systemic reform measures, which Dinesh Thakur and me have written about in our book, The Truth.
Okay. Prashant, hi, welcome to the show. This is Ekta. You're right. There is little information in terms of the data available with regards to this case, but the violations, they seem, according to a lot of the regulators that I've spoken to, could also include data integrity, possible falsified data. Would you agree with that, based on what you've read about the inspection which took place by the drug regulators? And if so, what could the repercussions be in that case?
See, you're right. I mean, data integrity has been an issue with the pharmaceutical industry, the Indian pharmaceutical industry, for the last 15 years. My co-author blew the whistle at Ranbaxy, when Dinesh blew the whistle at Ranbaxy, it was primarily over data integrity issues. So we've known for a long time that Indian pharmaceutical companies simply do not comply with GMP practices, because the essence of GMP, good manufacturing practices, is to record data in a timely manner, in a manner where the records cannot be tampered with in the future. So the fact that there are data integrity issues at this plant, I don't think will surprise anybody familiar with the workings of the Indian pharmaceutical industry. Now, coming to your second question on what the repercussions are, the main issue that we fear, and Dinesh and I have written about this in the context of the DEG poisoning incident that took place in Jammu in January 2020. After the incident was detected, the government failed to conduct a proper investigation and recall of all cough syrups manufactured by that particular company, because of which 8 months after the 11 children died, a 12th child died because she consumed, a 2-year-old child had consumed a cough syrup, a different brand of cough syrup manufactured by the same company. So when it comes to this particular company, Maiden Pharmaceuticals, one of our chief concerns is whether the government has taken action against the other cough syrups manufactured by this company, which are sold in India. The government's defense so far on record has been that the 4 particular brands detected in Gambia are not sold in India. While that may be the case, I am pretty certain that this company is selling other brands of cough syrup in India, and if it wasn't testing for propylene, testing the propylene glycol for DEG contamination when it was manufacturing batches for export, what exactly is the guarantee that it was testing for DEG contamination when it was manufacturing cough syrups in India? And the government is not coming out with a transparent investigation report on what exactly is the status of that. Do we really want to wait until Indian children die because of the fact that this company has failed to conduct quality testing for the cough syrups that it's selling in India? And that's the question that all of us should be asking the government at this stage.
Okay. So as of now, there is a possibility that there could be other brands by Maiden Pharma which could be cough syrups and could possibly, we don't know about the status of it at this point in time, whether it's still being distributed or sold within pharmacies in India. So that could be a possible risk. But I just wanted to know if in case the government does plan to pull out any kind of drugs from Maiden Pharma across, say, a state or across the country, how easy is that going to be? Do you think that that process has already begun?
No, it is a very complicated process. Dinesh and I have written an entire chapter in our book on this. So basically, there has been a debate in India since 1976 on the need for a national drug recall law. Because what happens is when a drug is manufactured in Himachal Pradesh, it moves, say, across the country to Tamil Nadu or Andhra Pradesh, where the drug is then detected to have failed a quality test. Now, because regulation is fragmented across the country, that is, each state and union territory has its own regulator, and every state regulator is confined to the territorial jurisdiction of its own state. So they don't have powers to operate in other states. And the CDSCO itself plays a very limited role. So when you want to effect a national recall, you need agencies with the power to enter premises, search, and seize stock. And they should be able to do this without worry about territorial boundaries. Just look at the way Gambia right now is conducting its recall. They are going door to door, pharmacy to pharmacy, to ensure that those particular cough syrups are in fact recalled. In India in 2012, after a parliamentary standing committee gave the government a dressing down, the CDSCO came out with a set of recall guidelines which lack any force of law. And since 2012, that is almost 10 years, they have been discussing how to translate it into law. Now, it's not rocket science translating those guidelines into binding law. It's just that they don't want to do it, because the only agency that can execute a national recall effectively will have to be a national regulator. And as we've seen from the CDSCO's track record, it will do anything to avoid any form of accountability when it comes to ensuring the public health of the Indian people.
Mr. Reddy, if I can just ask you another question. You mentioned that data integrity issues is something that we've seen for a number of times. You've seen a number of times across various pharma companies, across the pharma sector. The nature of violations, of course, also that have emerged, managed to fly under the radar of the regulatory mechanism. Can it be said with any sense of confidence that cases such as this, such as that of Maiden Pharma, is an isolated incident? Or perhaps should we prepare ourselves? Can there be more such instances that could be uncovered should the investigations be taken to their logical conclusion?
I'm pretty sure Maiden Pharma is not the only company. There will be several other companies. It's possible that they're not manufacturing cough syrup and they're manufacturing other medicines where the risk of deadly adulteration is less, but they're very likely producing drugs that don't work. For example, when we were researching this book, we came across inspection reports from Karnataka. Rather stop production orders in Karnataka, where Karnataka drug inspectors had inspected plants within their state and discovered that the situation was so bad that the facilities had to stop manufacturing drugs. And a common thread in a lot of these stop production orders was the fact that these small and medium pharma companies did not have a separate quality assurance, quality control department, which is mandated under the Good Manufacturing Practices Code in Indian law. So yes, I mean, if the government really wants to start digging in, and if they really want to make those inspection reports publicly available, I'm sure we'll find several other companies which are in flagrant violation of the law. Absolutely no doubt about it.
Okay, Mr. Reddy, you know, we are running short of time, but I just wanted your quick thoughts on this, because there are these state drug regulators such as the Karnataka regulator, Maharashtra regulator, that have started sending out updates or notifications to pharma companies indicating that they need to check their supply chain, they need to check where they are sourcing their raw materials from. Do you think that this incident has finally woken up to change something tangible in the Indian drug system?
Well, I mean, it's too soon to say that. The law already requires these manufacturers to test the quality of, the input material that they're using in the manufacture of drugs. So these notices that Maharashtra and Karnataka are sending out it's not a big step in the right direction. But I don't know. We have to see. This incident has definitely gotten a lot more attention than the Jammu incident 2 years ago, because it's been flagged by international body and the government can't evade it easily. And the number of children who have died is just enormous. But time will tell us that this is, going by the way the Indian government works, 1 week is too soon a time to declare whether there's going to be actual reform. Hopefully down the next few weeks, we will hear more substantive steps being taken by the government to reform how drug regulation works.
Right, Mr. Reddy, thank you so much for taking out your time and sharing your thoughts with us. It'll be interesting to see whether this invites some kind of legal scrutiny or maybe perhaps a PIL before the top court. We're yet to see any action, any development on that front. But with that, it's time now to slip into a very short break. But coming up, we will be joined by Udaya Bhaskar, Director General at PharmExcel, as well as Kewal Handa, former Managing Director at Pfizer India, to discuss more on this subject. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. The Haryana government has stopped production at the Maiden Pharma plant, which is linked to the death of 69 children in Gambia due to the contaminated cough syrups. We have with us Udaya Bhaskar, who is the Director General PharmExcel, and Kewal Handa, former MD of Pfizer India, joining in to share their thoughts. Mr. Bhaskar, I'll start with you. PharmExcel cancelled the membership of Maiden Pharma just last week. Can you just tell us what your experience has been with Maiden Pharma, and why wasn't a step like this taken earlier, considering that in 2013, Maiden Pharma was one of the 46 companies that in fact was banned from sales in Vietnam. Plus, there have been incidents where regulators in India themselves have pulled up the company since 2015.
Actually, this has come to our notice for the first time, and particularly we have taken the caution of WHO and the DG WHO statement about the death of 66 children in Gambia. That particular product contains, the diethyl glycol and ethylene glycol at higher limits. That has made us, we have taken that into confidence, and we have issued a notice to the Maiden Pharma to explain their stand. And they have not responded to our letter, and we suspended their RCMC registration cum membership certificate, which they are entitled to have some sort of an incentives from the Minister of Commerce and Government of India. That is the only thing we can do, and it's in the ambit of PharmExcel.
Okay, all right. So that means the incentives which were provided by PharmExcel have stopped, but the export license is not in your hands.
Yes, that is with the DGFT.
Okay, all right.
Import-export code always lies with the DGFT.
Okay. Mr. Handa, you've probably been following this case. I wanted to get your angle, in terms of what this does to the possible reputation of Indian pharma as well. Because that is something that PharmExcel brought up when they wrote about this particular case, that it's a possibility that the reputation of Indian pharma could also get impacted because of cases like these. Do you think that MNCs would now probably think twice? Would there be any kind of tangible impact, or do they understand that this is a separate part of the pharmaceutical industry that we're discussing in India and is not linked to the over $20 billion of exports of generic drugs from the country?
So very good afternoon to all of you. I think everything is linked. It's linked to the reputation of the Indian manufacturers. It's linked to the quality of the products which are being sold globally. It links to our ethical and moral issues. I think this case where a generic company sells its products in a market which is unregulated market. Gambia is an unregulated market. And therefore, it had a free hand in terms of quality checks, I would say. So there was no self-quality check done by this company. Unfortunately, our regulations are not in tune with global regulations like PICS or the European regulations or the US FDA. So I think there's a very strong need today. And if you see globally, most of the global companies today are only buying if you're a compliant, if you're a PICS compliant or a European compliant, or you meet the US FDA requirements, a Japanese requirement, Austrian requirement. There are a few countries yet which are unregulated where these things probably would happen. But in the other countries where the Indian companies are selling these products, I don't think such a drastic thing would have happened. And I don't want to paint every Indian company selling in the export market is indulging in a thing which the Maiden Pharma has done. I think they are very responsible. They do understand the importance of global trade. They do understand the compliances. They do understand the safety and efficacy of the product, and they are pretty well in the global market. But one such incident pulls us back. And then this is where the red alarm should start working right now.
Mr. Handa, if I can just ask a follow-up question. We were joined by Mr. Reddy. I'm not sure if he heard what he had to say. One of the concerns that he has expressed are quality control issues, which he believes are quite prevalent. And he went on to, in fact, previously write in the book as well, that in many cases we've seen that there's a different standard of quality control adopted when supplying to a Western country, a European country, and a different when supplying to a developing emerging country. Is there a need felt for more consistent standards, perhaps an oversight mechanism that is more centralized?
So I think to some extent it's right. If you are compliant to PICS or you're compliant to European or US, you are compliant to those quality standards. But if you're supplying to unregulated market, well, you're complying to the Indian standards. Now, or the WHO requirements. Now, as far as the Indian standards are concerned, you do comply almost 90% of the essays and impurities and so on and so forth. But there is no proper, audit or proper checks on what it is going on. And therefore, we need to tighten our internal regulation. There are two ways of doing it. A, strengthen the CDSO completely, have more inspectors, more audits to be done, more quality checks to be done, more labs to be open to do the essays and so on and so forth. Or ask all the companies to comply with either PICS or with European, which most of the export companies are doing it. But that leaves us the domestic market very vulnerable. We have seen this in export market today. Tomorrow it will happen in domestic market. How do you tighten a domestic market? Now the challenge here is very clearly, I will tell you, is we're too obsessed with the pricing of the products. We do not give any scope or any leverage for investment in quality, in safety, in checks and controls, in good ingredient products. I think its time has come that we need to have a less obsession on pricing, but more obsession on efficacy and safety. I think that's very, very critical for the domestic employee. We should not, cheat the domestic patients giving a poor products and give a good product to the export market because we are compliant PICS or the European compliant.
Sure. We're running out of time, Mr. Bhaskar. Final question to you, and this, of course, is again with respect to the regulatory oversight here. The concern that has been expressed is that we have the CDSO at the center, we have state regulatory bodies as well, adds to confusion, adds to overlaps. Is there a need for a more centralized structure to regulate such issues of quality control, Mr. Bhaskar?
Mr. Ashmit, just I would like to say that, particularly this episode has made a dent on Indian pharmaceutical exports, but it's an aberration. 55% of our exports are going to highly regulated markets. But here, we need to send a message, particularly it is under investigation. The CDSCO need to send a message to the world that, we are acting on this, and this kind of an activity will not be tolerated at any cost. This kind of a message is to be very loud and clear to the world. At the same time, we are discussing this issue since last 7 days or 5-6 days. That certainly we should all feel bad about this episode. But let us wait for the investigation report to come. As of now, we have taken the stand of DG WHO into confidence and cognizance. Let us hope.
Wait for the investigation report. That, of course, will give us more clarity on the way forward, especially once it's put in the public domain. That has been a consistent cry by various activists, but that unfortunately is all the time that we have for.
They are the right people to come out with
right, Mr. Bhaskar.
Report. Yeah, thank you.
Right, Mr. Bhaskar. Thank you so much for joining us with your time. Mr. Handa as well for giving your perspective on this perhaps being a moment of awakening, a moment of reckoning for the industry. But that's all the time that we have for. It's a wrap on this special broadcast. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV18. The news and updates continue right here, up on the other side.